In February 2007, Florida regulators made a stunning announcement. The man behind the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, the biggest boy bands in history, had been running a massive fraud for more than 20 years. His name was Lou Pearlman, and behind the platinum records, the mansion, and the celebrity photographs was a Ponzi scheme that would devastate more than 1,000 victims, many of them elderly retirees who lost everything. The court agreed restitution figure was $300 million. But when investigators tried to recover the money, they discovered something fitting. Even his art collection was fake. Louis J. Pearlman was born on June 19, 1954, in Flushing, Queens, New York. From the beginning, he was drawn to spectacle, to the idea of building something enormous, whether real or not. Before he ever heard a boy band audition, Pearlman was in the aviation business. He launched Airship Enterprises and Airship International, companies dealing in blimps and airships. But his ambitions outpaced reality. He created Transcontinental Airlines, Inc., a company that existed only on paper. There were no aircraft, no routes, no passengers. It was a shell, and it would become the vehicle for 2 decades of fraud. In 1992, Pearlman placed a classified ad in the Orlando Sentinel seeking teen male vocalists. It was the ad that would change pop music and the lives of thousands of investors forever. From that ad, the Backstreet Boys were born, and then NSYNC, then O-Town, LFO, Take 5, Aaron Carter, and others. Pearlman had an undeniable instinct for finding talent and packaging it into cultural phenomena. To the world, he was a genius impresario, a heavyset grinning showman who lived in a Mediterranean revival mansion filled with celebrity photos and gold records. He had the broad, confident smile of a man who wanted you to trust him, and people did. The fraud had been running since approximately 1981, long before the first boy band audition. Pearlman enticed individuals and banks to invest in Transcontinental Airlines, Transcon Records, and their parent company, Transcontinental International. All existed largely or entirely on paper. He launched a fraudulent employee investment savings account program, the ESA, promising annual returns of 6 to 10%. He told investors their money was insured by the FDIC, AIG, and Lloyd's of London. None of it was true. To secure bank loans, Pearlman created fake financial statements from a fictitious accounting firm he called Cohen and Siegel, named, audaciously, after notorious gangsters Mickey Cohen and Bugsy Siegel. For over 20 years, nobody caught it. The firm had a phone number. If you called, you reached an answering machine. Investigators would later discover that the voice on that machine belonged to Pearlman himself. Prosecutors determined Pearlman took approximately $195 million from individual investors in the fake savings program. Another $126.7 million came from fraudulent bank loans, and roughly $70 million more from people who believed they were purchasing company shares. He used the same collateral for multiple loans, approximately 30 fraudulent bank loans totaling around $190 million. It was a classic Ponzi structure. New money paying old promises, the music industry success providing a veneer of legitimacy. The artists themselves were also being exploited. Under their contracts, Pearlman collected pay as both manager and producer, and as a self-designated sixth member of the Backstreet Boys, taking 1/6 of the band's own income. NSYNC's first album sold 10 million copies, yet each member was reportedly still on a $35 per diem. When they finally received their checks, the amounts barely covered minimum wage for their hours worked. Nearly all of Perlman's acts would eventually sue him, and all of them won or settled. In 2006, investigators began unraveling what was then considered the longest-running Ponzi scheme in American history. The FBI examined Perlman's shell companies and found fabricated FDIC insurance certificates, forged AIG and Lloyd's of London documents, and sham financial statements. Inside the field office, agents traced money through a web of interconnected shell entities. Whiteboards mapped the flow of funds. Transcontinental Airlines feeding into Transcon Records, feeding into Transcontinental International, a closed loop of phantom companies. The Cohen and Siegel phone number was a critical discovery. When agents traced it, the line connected to an answering machine, and the voice on it was unmistakably Perlman's. He had been his own fictitious accountant for 2 decades. Florida regulators formally took possession of Transcontinental's savings program. The state's announcement sent shockwaves through the Orlando investment community. Hundreds of retirees realized their life savings had been placed in an entirely fraudulent program. But by January 2007, Perlman was already gone. As the investigation intensified, he fled the United States. His movements reportedly took him through Germany, Bali, and possibly through Russia, Belarus, Israel, Spain, Panama, and Brazil. Meanwhile, in Orlando, one of his few legitimate assets, Church Street Station, a historic entertainment complex downtown, was sold at auction for $34 million in April 2007. It was a fraction of what victims were owed. Trustees, attempting to auction Perlman's personal assets, made a discovery that perfectly encapsulated the man. His mansion was filled with what appeared to be fine art and memorabilia. Most of it was counterfeit. Even his personal world was a fabrication. For months, Perlman evaded capture across multiple continents. Then, in June 2007, a German tourist couple spotted him at a hotel in Nusa Dua, Bali, thousands of miles from Florida, in a tropical paradise. On June 14, 2007, Perlman was arrested in that tourist hotel. The man who had created global pop phenomena was taken into custody in a resort lobby, half a world away from the empire he had built on lies. 13 days later, on June 27th, a federal grand jury indicted Perlman on charges of conspiracy, money laundering, and filing false bankruptcy claims. The charges carried the weight of decades of deception. Perlman was extradited back to the United States to face justice. The showman who once commanded rooms full of record executives and investors now sat in a federal holding facility, stripped of his gold watch and silk shirts. Prosecutors laid out the full architecture of the scheme in devastating detail. The phantom airline, the ghost accounting firm, the forged insurance certificates, each layer of deception meticulously documented across tens of thousands of pages. Faced with the mountain of evidence, Perlman chose to plead guilty to all charges: conspiracy, money laundering, and making false statements during bankruptcy proceedings. There would be no trial. On May 21, 2008, U.S. District Judge G. Kendall Sharp sentenced Lou Perlman to 25 years in federal prison. The courtroom gallery was filled with victims, many elderly, some in wheelchairs, who had lost their retirement savings. Judge Sharp offered an unusual provision. Perlman's sentence could be reduced by 1 month for every $1 million he helped recover. It was an incentive designed to encourage him to reveal where the money had gone. Virtually nothing was recovered. The money had been spent, lost, or hidden beyond reach. The judge's offer expired in silence, unanswered by any meaningful restitution. Perlman was ordered to pay $300 million in restitution, a figure agreed upon by federal authorities as the amount owed to defrauded investors and banks. For most victims, it was a number on paper that would never translate into recovery. In 2010, Perlman suffered a stroke while incarcerated. He was later diagnosed with a heart valve infection. His health deteriorated steadily within the federal prison medical system. On August 19, 2016, Lou Perlman died at the Federal Correctional Institution in Miami at the age of 62. The cause was an infection of the heart's inner lining following heart valve replacement surgery. He never served his full sentence. His victims never received full justice. Victims reportedly recovered about 4 cents on the dollar. For elderly retirees who had entrusted their life savings to a program they believed was federally insured, that number represented a catastrophe that could never be undone. The Perlman case exposed how long a Ponzi scheme can survive when wrapped in cultural legitimacy. The Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were real. Their talent was real. Their success was real. But the empire behind them was built entirely on sand. It also forced the music industry to reckon with predatory contract structures. Perlman's practice of inserting himself as a phantom band member, taking an artist's share while contributing nothing artistically, became a cautionary tale for a generation of young performers. The regulatory failures were equally striking. For more than 2 decades, a fictitious accounting firm named after famous criminals went unquestioned. Forged federal insurance certificates were accepted at face value. The systems designed to protect investors simply did not catch him in time. Lou Perlman built a world where nothing was as it appeared. The airline had no planes. The accounting firm had no accountants. The insurance was fiction. The art was counterfeit. And in the end, so was every promise he ever made. When Lou Perlman died in federal prison, victims had recovered 4 cents on every dollar they lost. Reportedly, only a handful of people attended his funeral. A new case drops every day. Subscribe so you never miss one.